Hi, this is Nando from C&C Commentaries, and you're listening to C&C Movie Breakdowns. On today's episode, we will be talking about the 1974 horror movie, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed by Tobe Hooper. I'm, of course, joined by my co-host, Chase.
Hey, that's me.
That is...
But before we get to all that stuff, we have a big celebration.
Oh,
Nando, we did it. We did it, man.
what did we
We,
do,
we
Chase?
reached 4 episodes.
4 whole episodes.
4 whole episodes. That's a record.
It's a brand new record for you, isn't it?
It's a new record for the channel. A podcast that's 4 episodes.
Crazy.
You know what? Just after this episode, we're going to retire.
Yeah,
This is it.
sorry to any future guest stars, but we're
Yeah,
retiring.
canceled. We're done. We're retiring. It's been a good run, I think. But
4 whole movies, it's over.
we must go on to greener and greater pastures.
All right.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Before we start,
Quite an innovative film.
yes, it is. Before we start, I will give a short synopsis though.
I appreciate it.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a movie about a group of teens who go to a rural part of Texas to check out their grandfather's grave, but instead they run into a killer. A killer named Leatherface. And of course, this movie was extremely innovative for its time. It was 1974, and it helped revolutionize the slasher genre.
That is correct.
Yes, it is.
Well, I guess we should start off with first impressions, and just overall thoughts.
Yes.
Do you want to start with you, because this was your? I picked this movie for us to watch, and this was your first time seeing this.
Yes, this was my first ever viewing of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
What did you think?
I mean, obviously, I've heard a lot about this movie. This movie stars a really famous killer called Leatherface. You know, he's really famous. And I watched the movie, and it was okay. This movie was made in 1974, after all. I think I appreciate this movie for the innovations it had and for its killer. But everything else was just kind of okay. That's expected for this movie. It was made on an extremely low budget.
Well, just because films are made on a low budget or came out over 40 years ago doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be bad or bad quality.
No, I didn't say this movie is bad quality. It's just okay.
Well, I saw this movie for the first time like maybe 2 years ago, and I've only seen this one and the direct sequel after this, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Besides that, I haven't seen any of the other sequels, prequels, remakes, whatever the hell you want to call the rest of those. I don't know, the timeline gets kind of weird, I've heard. But and I picked this movie to start off our horror-a-thon because I don't have a necessarily strong affinity for it, but I think it's pretty revolutionary, and it helped establish some key things like the slasher, and it was really one of the first films to do have a final girl type thing. And I think there's a lot of cool technical stuff done, and I think you have to recognize the impact it had.
Yes. I think that's definitely the most standout feature of this movie. Its impact and legacy. This movie definitely made some great innovations. It has some good practical effects. And it pretty much invented the final girl trope.
Yeah, I think that I was doing some research a little earlier, but I'm pretty sure there were like a few others before this, but this was kind of like the big one that really established what a final girl really is. And then obviously you see that throughout horror films now, even today.
Yeah.
So I guess let's jump on in.
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in with our chainsaws and get roaring.
Yeah. All right, so the first scene of this movie. Chase, why don't you go into the first scene of this movie?
Well, even before we get into a scene, we're immediately taken in by it's the credits, and it's like a little report, and it's talking about how this is based on a true story of these teens. And while that's not necessarily true, you know, none of these people were real. Leatherface is very much based on the real life killer Ed Gein, who was a serial killer, and he would make furniture and stuff out of human bones, which we come to see later on in the movie.
Yeah.
Thing in the house.
Yeah. So.
And
sorry,
you go.
We're treated to this like radio broadcast, and then it says how like graves have been defiled and bodies have been dug up, and then we're introduced to our characters. So.
Yes. And one of the things I liked about that that opening is the screeching and blaring sound effect.
Yeah.
That we get. I think the sound design in this movie is actually really well done.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. Also,
like that iconic shriek, and like it's like it gets in your head.
Also, when the kind of like the credits of the movie at the beginning, we're treated to like this weird kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like this red screen. It almost looks like
I'm pretty sure it's like it's solar flares.
Yeah. And you know, it's really like strange and kind of entrancing. This movie definitely pulls you in.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So after that, we get introduced to our characters, and in the first like actual scene, you get to see our characters like all riding together in this van, and they're all riding to Texas because our main girl Sally and
I think they're already in Texas. Yeah. They're just driving
because the main girl Sally and her brother, who is in a wheelchair, named Franklin, they're gonna go find their grandfather's grave and see if it's been dug up like other graves in the area have.
Can we pause?
Sure.
You're cut. You're like, I don't know what's going on.
Can you not hear me clearly?
I can hear you. It's just sometimes I don't know if it's like you're thinking or if it's just. I think it's also you're just going in and out again.
I'm cutting out?
It's not you're cutting out. It's like you'll say it's very delayed.
Oh.
And then also that you keep hearing that thud.
What?
Just like tapping.
Oh, my bad. Okay, here, I'll hold the mic like this. Alright, hold on, let me... Alright, is this any better?
It sounds good. Sounds the same.
Alright, where did we leave off?
Franklin.
Okay. And yeah, so they're driving across Texas to find their grandfather's grave to check to see if it's been like dug up or something.
Yes.
And then they pick up a hitchhiker.
Yes, right off the bat, we get.
It's pretty
before that, they go to their grandfather's grave, and there's a drunk man on the floor spouting nonsense about like the devil and whatnot.
Yeah, he tells them not to come and stuff like that.
And of course, nobody ever listens to the crazy drunk guy rambling nonsense for some reason. Who would think?
Yeah, I actually think this movie, that's not a trope this movie kind of develops. The crazy old character that, you know, it's kind of like he's crazy, but he's telling the truth. He's like, oh, there's something bad is gonna happen, and the characters never believe him.
But I don't even think it's not like that guy knew what was going to happen. It's just coincidental foreshadowing. But we get Sally and Franklin and the rest of the crew, and they're driving in their van. And then, of course, hey, look, there's a hitchhiker. Let's go pick up the hitchhiker.
Yeah, I just had to pick up the hitchhiker.
Played by Edwin Neal, and he's one of my favorite parts of this movie.
Yeah, he definitely does a good job of portraying a crazy man. Definitely. Here, Chase, why don't you explain what happens in this hitchhiker scene?
All right, so they pick him up, and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And so they're talking, and they're driving by, and they pass the slaughterhouse, and they're like, "Oh, they smell." And he's like, "Oh, my family works for the slaughterhouse." And Franklin's like, "Oh yeah, our grandfather worked for the slaughterhouse." And the hitchhiker, who we later find out in the sequel, his name is Nubbins. But so if you hear us going back and forth referring to him as either, that's why. He shows them some Polaroids of like slaughtered and mutilated cows, and obviously this is like they're not necessarily pleased to see this. I don't know how many people would be seeing photographs of slaughtered cows.
If somebody jumped into my van and started handing me photos of slaughtered animals, I kicked them out pretty fast.
Well, yeah, it was the 70s, man. We're here for a good time.
Anything could happen in the 70s.
But he pulls out a knife and he cuts open his hand. And then he goes and he stabs Franklin. And when he slices his hand and he cuts Franklin's arm, honestly, I think that's the most graphic point of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, really.
And this is
like,
a movie...
as much... Like, we don't really see that much blood and stuff in this movie.
And this is
gruesome violence.
This is a movie where Leatherface cuts a man's head off with a chainsaw.
He doesn't cut his head off.
Yeah.
He, like, slices him up and takes out his kneecaps.
Leatherface kneecap somebody. Anyway, a part of that scene right before the hitchhiker, like, takes out his knife and attacks Franklin with it was he actually took a picture of the group. And when he asked to be paid for this picture, Franklin's like, "I'm not going to pay you." And so he takes the picture, puts it in a little thing of tinfoil, sprinkles gunpowder on it, and then lights it on fire.
Yeah, because of course you just happen to have gunpowder in your pocket.
Yeah. He just lights it on fire. And so the group is obviously freaking out. He attacks Franklin with a knife, and then they kick him out.
Rightly so.
Rightly so, you know.
But as he's, hooting and hollering as he gets kicked out, he smears blood on the side of the van. And it's like, "Oh, I'll get you." And then, this gets Franklin really paranoid throughout the movie.
Franklin's constantly assuming the worst.
It's like, you don't think he'll follow us, right?
Yeah, he's trying to decipher this little message made out of blood on the van.
And then we get some more driving, and I forget the name of the girl, but she's reading an astrology book, and she's talking about how Mercury's in retrograde.
It's Saturn.
Or like Saturn's in retrograde.
Yeah.
So that means bad stuff's gonna go down.
She's talking about how Saturn is evil. And, maybe astrology works in this movie because bad stuff definitely happens. I mean,
It's
I
a
don't know.
first.
I don't know if Saturn was pissed off and decided to make Leatherface crazy, but
Well, this has been going down for years before, so
well, Saturn's been there.
it's that time of the week for some killing.
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, but you even when we were actually watching this movie, you said yourself that, I mean, Leatherface doesn't go out and actively kill these people, except for maybe one.
yeah, and we'll get to that when we get to them actually entering the house. But
Mhm.
from a certain perspective, it could be seen that these people just went and invaded Leatherface's house.
Yeah, you said. I think you said exactly. From a certain point of view, this is a home invasion movie.
Yeah, like if this was told from Leatherface's perspective, it could be semi-justified.
I mean, they invaded his home.
I mean, I'm not saying it's okay to eat people and put them on meat hooks,
Yeah.
but they did go into his house.
Um. So.
But anyways, why don't you tell us about the classic gas station barbecue?
Okay. Yeah. So they stop at this gas station, and then they ask the guy there, "Hey, can you fill her up?" And because their van ran out of gas, and then this guy's like, "I don't have any gas." And so he's like, "I do have barbecue though." And so they eat barbecue, and then they kind of wander, and I believe they find the house, right?
It really makes you wonder what was actually in that barbecue.
Oh yeah, considering what we learn later on.
Well, yeah, and also like even before that, when Franklin and the hitchhiker are talking, they're talking about like brain cheese
Hmm.
and like using the brain essence and leftover parts for like stews and whatnot.
Yeah, he was talking about how like they boil everything from a cow's
Yeah,
head.
they don't waste any.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
and Franklin's like, "Well, you'd probably like it if you didn't know what was in it."
yep. So
Uh,
they may or may not have involuntarily became cannibals.
yeah, but I mean, haven't we all been there?
Yeah, I mean, technically, that burger that I had from McDonald's 2 weeks ago, I don't know that it wasn't made out of human meat.
That's true.
Anyway, after they get barbecue, they find the house.
They do. Well, they find the grandfather's house.
Yeah, the group splits up.
The freaking I could call him like he looks like a disco guy.
Yeah, he does look like a disco guy. He's got a
Classic '70s do and hair and
he's
like
got a
the button up.
yeah. He looks like he's ready to party at the disco 24/7.
So him and his girlfriend, they're trying to find this like watering hole,
Yeah,
river, stream.
something that provides water.
Yeah, because Franklin tells him like, oh yeah, there's a spot down the path. You go down there, you can dip your feet and you get wet.
Yeah, but they find this house.
Well, they find the spot, but it's all dried up,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're like, oh look, what's that right there? House. And what do we do when we see a house?
You send one person into the house.
Of course. And you knock a few times, and if nobody answers,
You just
well,
go
that
in.
just means you could go right on in.
Maybe they're like sleeping or something. You just hobble on it. You just. Anyway, he like walks around for a few minutes, and here, Chase, why don't you tell them what happens to him?
Oh, I think this might be one of the best character introduction scenes ever.
Yeah.
Because, he's walking, he goes in. First off, the first sign to get out of that house should be seeing all those bones and skeletons on the wall.
Yeah.
Because it's literally there in the door frame. So then he goes in there, and then freaking we hear the pig squealing, and then like Leatherface only conveys in like pig squeals and like screaming,
Yeah, he just kind of grunts and screams.
or like, and then there's like he does like ladies screaming and like
Yeah,
I don't know.
when he puts on that like lady's skin.
Um, so he goes in there, and then he just gets bashed the fuck in the head
With a hammer.
with a sledgehammer
Yeah,
by Leatherface.
that's interesting because the sooner he enters into like Leatherface's like little murder den, he gets smacked in the head. And what's interesting is that I thought that the introduction for Leatherface was going to be just like grander or something, but no, he just smacks him in the head. It's like a one-shot kill. It's like,
Well, no, that's very clearly not a one, because they talk about earlier when killing the cows, they'd have to do like multiple hits.
Yeah,
and that before they got the little bolt guns, and so he's got to freaking bash the guy on the head, and you just see him like throbbing, pulsating on the ground.
Yeah, he's
kind of like squirming.
Yeah, he's kind of like shaking.
And so Leatherface bashes him a few more times.
Yeah, and then he dies. Oh,
and then he does that iconic door slam.
Yeah. I really like the shot of him before he slams the door, where you can just see him with the hammer, the body on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool shot.
I agree.
Another thing that this movie does is I feel, that stereotype that, horror movie characters are really dumb. I feel like that's really prevalent here.
Well,
because like some of these characters are dummies. I'm sorry.
Well, they're not necessarily smart, but I don't know.
Especially that later when
I wouldn't call them idiots. I mean, they're dumb for going into a random house.
Well, they okay, maybe they're not dumb, but they certainly make some dumb decisions.
Well, that's all. You wouldn't have a horror movie without dumb decisions.
Yeah. What's our next scene after he dies and we have that iconic door slam?
Man, you have a really bad memory.
I do indeed.
Well, we get the iconic shot of what's her name? Her name's Pam.
Yeah.
Pam in her red shorts, and the camera's like following her from up under, from a lower angle, and it's just I love how this scene is shot.
I also think that the music in this scene deserves a shout out because I think it does a really good job of building tension.
Mm-hmm.
Because that there's a man with a hammer in there.
Yeah, but she doesn't know that.
She has no clue. So the scene does a really good job of building tension. And then when she actually enters the house, she's calling her boyfriend's name. And he's not responding because he's already dead.
And then we hear some more pig squeals.
And then she walks into the room with the bone furniture.
And a chicken. And she's rightfully freaked the hell out.
Yeah. She just kind of stands in the middle of the room just looking around, being freaked out. Until Leatherface shows up.
And then we get her being put onto a freaking meat hook.
Yeah, Leatherface catches her and drags her into the murder den. And then he just sticks her on a meat hook.
And it's actually pretty tastefully shot.
I mean,
it's not bloody.
No.
And then it's like, the boyfriend's body is covering her, and then we have Leatherface sawing into him, but we don't see anything from that. And we just see her facial expressions.
And you just hear her screaming.
And it's just like, there's like no blood in that scene.
But it still remains to be like gruesome.
I mean, it's gruesome, but it's not gory. Which I feel like it's a pretty big misconception about this movie, that it's like a outright gory film.
Yeah, this movie like as you said earlier, I think the bloodiest scene in this movie is when Franklin gets his hand cut.
Yeah.
And that's saying something, because this man is literally murdering people with a chainsaw.
I mean, later when Franklin gets murdered, there's a lot of blood, but it's
not on screen.
It's kind of comical, honestly.
Yeah,
because Franklin is very clearly made out to be an annoying character.
Yeah, he's annoying. He's paranoid. He constantly like berates his sister.
He's blowing raspberries.
Yeah.
It's, he's just, you can tell early on, like, he's going to die.
Mm-hmm. And as you said earlier, his death scene is pretty funny.
Yeah.
I laughed when I saw it. So, the girlfriend gets placed on a meat hook, watches her boyfriend get sliced up with a chainsaw by Leatherface. And then we cut back to the brother and sister, and they're starting to get a bit worried. They're starting to wonder where their friends are.
Yes.
And it's starting to get a little dusk out, a little dark.
I should say, because I think we made an error. The disco guy, he doesn't go until after the couple. It's the other guy, Kirk, that is with the girlfriend, Pam. Kirk's the one whose head gets bashed.
Oh.
That was a slip of tongue on my end. My bad.
I see. We made a mistake. We apologize for that.
We're professionals.
Yeah, dude, we're so good at this.
We should probably talk about Gunnar Hansen himself as Leatherface.
Yeah.
I think he does a really good job.
Yeah, I think that despite the fact that Leatherface doesn't actually have a spoken word in this movie, I think he does a really good job of portraying him as a serious like threat. Not just because he's like a physical.
Does he have a spoken word?
I don't.
He probably does, but it's probably overshadowed by Drayden and Nubbins.
Well, if he does, I don't think Leatherface in this movie has a conversation with anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, Leatherface in this movie is super physically intimidating. For example, when when the chase scene is happening between Sally and Leatherface, the movie keeps like cutting to these shots, like of Sally running towards the camera and Leatherface is behind her, and you can just see how like menacing he is behind her. Just the size difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way of communicating an intimidating threat with no words.
I mean, and I don't think he needs it really.
I mean, he's a man.
Well, like even in the like his family dynamic, he's not gonna ever get the word in edgewise. He's just there to do what they tell him.
Yeah.
But later, after they realize that Pam and Kirk are not back yet, the disco man, he goes to check on him, and then he finds the house, and subsequently gets bashed.
Yeah. They definitely send characters one by one into this house. They can never go in a group. They can.
Well, I mean, if they all went together, they might be able to take Leatherface.
Can anybody take Leatherface? Can it?
I mean, 3 people versus one guy with a chainsaw.
No,
maybe.
He is a man with a chainsaw. He is a.
I mean, it's not like he is kind of a bumbling oaf type.
Yeah,
at the end of the movie, he cuts into his own leg.
Yeah, I think that I think the actor playing Leatherface, Gunnar Hansen, he does very well with Leatherface's body language.
Well, yeah, that's all he has.
Yeah, that's all he has to communicate. And he does a really good job with this, and you can definitely tell. Because, like, he gives Leatherface all these, like, jerky motions, and especially at the end of the movie where he's just swinging his chainsaw above his head.
One of my favorite little moments is after he gets done killing the third person, and then we just get this close-up of him, and you see, like, his teeth and his face, and, like, I feel like in his mind, he's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Another one?
Yeah.
3 in one day? Like, give me a break, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's just this close-up on his face, and you see these grotesque teeth, which
And you get to see his
I hope
eyes.
those were fake.
Yeah, that's probably were fake.
But yeah, he just sits down and, like, he puts his head in his hands, and, like, he's
just like, give me a break, I'm tired.
What's going on, man? Three in one day. It's a lot of work. Or at least I'd assume it's a lot of work to kill three teens.
And after he kills Disco Man, our third victim in this movie, this Sally and her brother Franklin are getting, like, desperate since it's getting dark out. And Sally and Franklin have, like, an argument because Franklin wants to stay near the van and keep honking the horn and hope they come back on their own, and Sally wants to go out with a flashlight and find them. So Franklin wants to stay near the van and honk the horn until they come back on their own. Sally wants to go out and find them with the one flashlight that they have. And so they fight, and Franklin continues to be annoying, and eventually Sally ends up pushing him in his wheelchair, and they try to find them with a flashlight. But, of course, Leatherface gets to them first.
Surprise! Leatherface in the woods, coming at you.
Yeah, this time Leatherface actually leaves his home. And so...
And I guess if you were taking this from the home invasion angle, this is the first unjustified kill.
Yeah, this is just murder. Like, he went out of his house to kill them. And so Franklin gets his comedic death. Leatherface just pops out of the woods, scares them both, and just, like, slashes Franklin in the chest with his chainsaw.
And, I'm glad that I'm glad that she just starts running.
Sally
doesn't give a fuck about Franklin.
Sally just ditches. She's like, oh, finally that annoying prick is gone.
I mean, the brother and sister, but there's, like, because sometimes you'll get it in movies where, like, they're obviously dead, but they try and do something. It's like, there's nothing you're gonna do. That fucker just got his lower half chopped off.
Yeah. Franklin just took a chainsaw to the chest. He's gone.
Yeah. It's not a very easy recovery.
Yeah.
But she runs back, and she keeps running, and she eventually ends up back at that gas station. In this movie, he's called the Cook. In the sequel, we find that his real name is Drayden Sawyer. Mm-hmm. And it's played by Jim Sedow, and he does a really good job in this movie, I think.
Yeah. Something before she gets to the gas station, she takes Leatherface on a really long run, in where she runs around his house like 3 times. And then eventually she, as like a last-ditch effort, she runs to the gas station to try to get help from this guy.
Yeah.
But, of course, he like puts a blanket over her, and then, and Leatherface just stops chasing her at this point. Like, you can't even hear his chainsaw anymore.
Well, I mean, I think he might have realized that, she's going over here.
Yeah, she's going over to the gas station.
He knows what to do there.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like we're already getting creepy vibes from him.
Yeah, he's kind of like, he tries to get close with her.
He's
really
like,
creepy.
there, stop screaming. It's okay. There's no phone here, but it'll all be all right.
Yeah. And then, of course, it's revealed that he's going to, like, kidnap her to take her to dinner with Leatherface.
Oh, he gets a fucking potato sack.
Yeah. And, she grabs a knife off of his counter, and he grabs a broom.
Yeah, it's a knife versus broom battle.
Like, I even said this when we were watching the movie. I was like, wow, what a pushover. She just lost a knife fight to a broom.
Hey, never diss a broom. As the Wicked Witch of the West once said.
Never diss a broom. Then he stuffs a cloth in her mouth and then puts her in a potato sack, throws her in a car.
And then we get the best dinner of all time.
Yeah. So once he takes her to the house again, and Leatherface and that crazy guy that got into a van and cut himself is there too.
Yeah, and then we realize, oh, wait a minute, this guy and this guy and this guy? Oh, they're all related.
They're all
hell of a family.
Yeah, it's a bunch of Leatherface, the guy that was called the cook, and the crazy man from the van are all brothers.
All right, is the cook the dad?
I don't know. He's definitely older than them, but I thought that he was another brother.
But I should have looked that up before.
Yeah, don't quote us on that. We think he's a brother, but he might be the dad. Anyway, so they tie her to a chair and they put her at the dinner table, and then Leatherface and the crazy man from the van bring down a chair with what looks to be a corpse on it.
Oh, well, we think it's a corpse. Little do we know it's Grandpa Sawyer.
Turns out he's very alive.
Oh, yeah. It's so odd. Like, how old could he possibly be?
Yeah, and when she was in the house earlier and she came across this, she thought it was a corpse, and he was just stood there motionless. He didn't even
Well, and there was another corpse right beside it of what looked like a lady.
Yeah. So that brings the question, is Grandma alive as well?
Nah, they would have brought her down for the meal probably if she was.
Yeah.
But we get a very interesting, to say the least, dinner between the four of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we get these I think, really interesting close-ups on Sally's eyes.
Yeah, I think
she's got these bright green eyes, which it's just cutting back and forth between her eyes and then close-ups of Drayden and the hitchhiker and Leatherface and just all these things, and you could feel the tension and the heat mounting.
Yeah,
that's another thing in this movie. I feel like you could feel the heat coming off the screen.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely feels sweaty.
Yeah, sweaty and gross and grimy atmosphere almost.
Yeah. And another thing that these close-up shots with her eye, I think they made me feel kind of claustrophobic.
Mm-hmm. Well, because she's wrapped up.
Yeah, she's tied up. It gives you this claustrophobia feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool that they can do that with just shots, close-up shots.
And then we get probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Grandpa's famous killing. Why don't you describe this one?
Basically, they put her head over a bucket and they kind of puppeteer the grandpa. They take his hand and they give him a hammer, and they're trying to get Grandpa to beat Sally's skull like a cow.
Well, first they cut open her finger. And then he sucks the blood.
And that kind of resuscitates him. He definitely... Yeah,
he does a little dance in place. And it's it's creepy and adorable at the same time.
This guy feels like a puppet, almost.
Kinda.
I don't understand. The blood just resuscitated him. It just gave him life.
He was thirsty, man.
Gotta get that blood.
It was pretty hot. He was like, I just need a cool drink.
give me your blood.
Um,
And then they like try to get Grandpa to kill this lady, but he doesn't have the strength to.
yeah, he can't grip the hammer, and we kept hearing how he's the best at killing. He's the best at killing. Only one hit needed.
They like hype him up, but then
Yeah, they hype him up, and that's the brilliant dark comedy of it all.
Yeah.
And like he's able to bash her head like
He's not able to do anything.
one or two times, but like not even like it's not enough to like get her down. She can still move, and it's like she's able to run off.
Yeah, he gives her like 2 love taps.
1, 2, and then she's able to like run off and jump through the window again.
Yeah,
And then wouldn't you know it, it's already morning again.
Yeah, apparently that was one long dinner.
Time flies when you're having fun.
So she's running, and Leatherface is chasing with his chainsaw, like usual. But this time she gets to a road, and the hitchhiker from earlier is also chasing her. And throughout the movie, in the beginning, you see this semi-truck. It's red. It's a red semi-truck, and you kind of see it pass by a few times in the movie. And wouldn't you know, it's the red semi-truck. And since Sally was crossing the road and the hitchhiker was behind her, he gets like smashed with his semi-truck.
Yep, and he's just he's down.
They actually show his body being run over by the semi-truck. And that this is some really good practical effects.
Yeah, like they had to have used a dummy, obviously.
No, they just ran over the actor.
I mean,
it's the 70s, man.
Hey, it's the 70s, man. How it's shot is done very well.
Yeah, and then a pickup truck like comes also down the road, and Sally's just like she's super desperate. And she gets
and she gets the guy's attention. But what I'll never understand is why they get in the truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they just hop out the other side of the other door.
Yeah.
For no reason whatsoever. They could easily have just drove off.
They could have just like got the truck and left. But no, they just leave it. So then this pickup truck shows up, and she pickup truck drives by. She flags down the driver, and then as Leatherface is about to get her, she just hops into the back of this pickup truck, and then with blood like on her entire body from the hitchhikers like splattering.
Yeah. It reminds me very much of Carrie, which came out like 2 years later, I'm pretty sure. But that just image of her covered in blood all over her face and hair in the back of the truck, and then Leatherface chasing after her, and afterwards swinging the chainsaw around. It's a very iconic shot.
Yeah. Also, she's seen like laughing. Like she starts to laugh. Either from like stress or just because she finally got away from Leatherface.
I feel like, and I think that's very true to real life scenarios as well. That people laugh sometimes when confronted with like horrific things, like as a coping thing in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Holy shit! What did I just go through?
All my friends are dead. I got to have dinner with a bunch of cannibals, and this man."
It's a night she'll never forget.
Yep, a night to go down in history.
We haven't really talked about Tobe Hooper, director and writer of the movie, and some of the shots in this movie, like I said earlier, are really well done, and it's like for the budget that this was made on, like 100 and something thousand, roughly. It's really impressive what they were capable of doing.
Yeah, I mean, this movie has definitely iconic shots and iconic scenes.
Yeah.
Like, that scene, or that shot with Leatherface slamming the door, or like standing in the doorway
Yeah,
after
that
this
doorway
first film.
scene, the framing is very well done.
Yeah.
Because you get that frame, and then you get also like the outline of the frame.
That scene where there's that low pen shot of the girlfriend entering the house. The claustrophobia inducing scene where it's like the dinner and she's you get all these close ups of Sally's eyes.
The editing is really well done as well.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know.
It's like sometimes it's pretty rapid cuts, and it just like provides a tension and like you said earlier, like a not like a gritty tone, but like just unsettling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just so many iconic shots and iconic scenes in this movie, and of course he definitely wrote some of the tropes that would become really famous in the horror genre.
Yeah.
So you've got to commend him for that.
Yeah, I think you like whether your horror films are your type of movie or not. I think you have to respect what this did for the genre.
Yeah, this movie definitely.
And it helps that it's shot and filmed very well.
I like this
and
movie.
You can tell that everyone's like all the actors are giving it their all.
Yeah, actors definitely commit. Like when you can tell when Sally's the actress playing Sally is needs to scream, she really screams.
Well, also because like I heard that dinner scene was like filmed over like 24 hours, and it was like scorching hot, and like their food was rotting. So I could just already imagine that was a hellish scene already in real life as well.
Yeah, that must have been really tough to film, especially for a Leatherface who has to wear that.
Yeah, that's another thing. The makeup in this movie's done really well as well.
Yeah, the makeup and all the practical effects are done well. You know, this movie doesn't have a lot of blood, but the blood still looks pretty cool.
You know what dead body I feel bad about the most in this movie?
Which one?
The freaking armadillo at the beginning.
Yeah. And you know what's probably sadder is that that's probably a real armadillo.
Oh yeah, it was probably taxidermized, but it's probably a real armadillo.
Like, knowing this movie's budget, that's totally a real armadillo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a pillow pet.
But no, just this entire movie overall did a lot for the horror genre, and I think that's its biggest perk.
Should we wrap up with final thoughts and ratings?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
You go first.
Oh, thank you for giving me the honor. Overall, I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the most influential horror films to come out of all time. I think the characters are pretty memorable. It's got a lot of memorable scenes. It's got one of the most iconic killers of all time. It's really something that brought American horror to a new level of like that 70s resurgence. And it's shot incredibly well. And I just feel like it started a new wave for like low budget horror, and I think that's something you have to respect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. For my closing thoughts on this movie, I agree with you. Like, I definitely agree with you. This movie, its legacy, the tropes it basically like popularized and invented on, the memorable killer, like this movie's legacy is legendary.
Yeah, whether we'd like to, like, we could save that for another day, because I'm sure in the future we'll probably talk about the other movies.
Yeah.
And that'll be a whole nother story, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty safe to say that this franchise is, especially in, the later movies, it's definitely been milked.
I mean, yeah. as all good franchises go.
Mm-hmm. But for this, yeah, it was just this movie's revolutionary. It helped the horror genre a lot, especially the slasher subgenre.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was one of the first slashers that was really popularized. The directing in this movie, the acting, even though the characters aren't the most in depth, but they don't need to be. This is not the type of movie with super.
It's a very simple story at its core.
This is just a story about some teenagers that get murdered by a cannibal murdering family.
Yeah.
These characters don't need depth. Some of them are just there to die.
And I feel like if you wanted, you could look more in depth about the underlying tones of like America and like, like not urbanization, but like, because they're working family, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are. They're like, because it talks about them going from like the more simplistic ways of butchering to the more industrialized. That's the word I was looking for, not urbanized, industrialized. I feel like some of that subtext is definitely there.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's definitely there. You just gotta think about it or dig for it.
Yeah.
How about we move on to ratings?
Ratings, I am going to give the Texas Chainsaw Massacre a 7 out of 10.
I will also have to give the Texas Chainsaw Massacre a 7 out of 10.
Yeah. That was the kickoff of our spooky movie-a-thon.
A little Halloween special.
Even though our October special, one could say.
Yeah.
But that's just the start.
That's just the start. There's more to come, ladies and gentlemen.
And why don't you give them a tease of what is to come?
Next we're going to be talking about. It's got humor. It's got kills. But most importantly, it's got clowns.
And no, we're not talking about Stephen King's It.
I'm of course referring to the classic horror movie Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
It's been a long time since I've seen this.
This is one of my favorite horror movies. I like this movie way more than I should.
I think it's safe to say we're definitely covering our first So Bad It's Good movie.
Oh, you're darn right. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. If you made it this far, we appreciate your viewership.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
If you enjoy, you can like, you can subscribe, you can comment. Let us know what you think about the Texas Chain. Damn it, I did it. I pulled the U.
I knew it would happen.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You can follow us on Instagram at C&C Commentaries. And, thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. This has been C&C Movie Breakdowns.
Wait, they're watching? They can see us?
Oh no, Chase, we gotta run.
No, not again.
Oh, God. Goodbye, everyone.